Back in January 2007, a Sacramento-based radio station known as KDND-FM was playing their morning show segment on air called The Morning Rave. During this morning segment, they held an on-air contest named Hold Your Wee for a Wee. The challenge involves contestants drinking as much water as they possibly could without urinating, and the winner in this case would win a Wii gaming console, which was pretty neat since it was just newly released 2 months ago at the time. However, despite the radio show host having no ill intentions with this contest, by the end of it, one of the contestants would suffer severely and eventually led to their death. The contest was held in one of the filming rooms at KDND Studios. The 18 contestants who took part in the competition were selected by calling in and telling their story of the worst Christmas gift they had ever received, in which the winners were chosen by the radio station employees. It began early in the morning at around 6:45 AM and started off with handing each person a 240ml water bottle in which they had to drink within a certain time period without using the restroom or vomiting it out. On top of this, they were handed a new bottle every 15 minutes, and as time went by, they were handed larger quantities of water in order to increase the difficulty of the challenge. While there were many participants who wanted to win for numerous reasons, we'll be taking a look at one of them named Jennifer Strange, a 28-year-old mother of 3 children who wanted the Wii for her kids. It had already been up to an hour and Jennifer was feeling some sort of discomfort. However, she insisted on carrying on. During this entire radio show, the regular scheduled programming was still going on. However, from time to time, the host would come back into the room to check on the contestants and to give updates to those tuning in. Now you would think that the host would feel some sort of empathy towards them, but at the end of the day, they simply just viewed their pain and discomfort as a form of entertainment. Unfortunately, the host would commonly make jokes about the contestants and try to hype them up to keep them going since it would help with their viewership. As previously mentioned, the regular scheduled programming was still in effect, and this meant that viewers could still call in the show while this was all happening. The host would pick up and answer callers in which a majority of them expressed their concern for the contestants and told them to call it off. Of course, they didn't listen, but probably one of the more shocking responses came from one of the show's DJs. One of the listeners, who was later identified as Eva Brooks, explained that she was a nurse and stated how dangerous the game was. In her own words, she said, "I want to say that those people drinking all the water can get sick and die from water intoxication." And, well, she is correct, as drinking an excessive amount of water can throw off electrolyte balance in the body, which can cause brain swelling and lead to seizures, coma, or even death. There's even been studies that show that drinking more than 1 liter of water per hour over several hours can put you at serious risk. But of course, they didn't listen, and one of the DJs responded by saying that they were aware of that and that the participants signed releases, so they technically weren't responsible.
Those people that are drinking all that water can get sick and possibly die from water intoxication.
Yeah, we're aware of that. They signed releases, so we're not responsible.
After the call, one of the disc jockeys questioned the possibility of water intoxication by asking, "Can you get water poisoning and die?" In which one of the other disc jockeys replied by saying it was impossible with water, later stating, "A human's body is 98% water, so why couldn't anyone take in as much water as they wanted to?" It was the same jockey stating that they should have done more research about this beforehand.
How much water do you think you can drink before you have to wee? Oh, dude.
Can't you get water poisoning and die? No.
Well, the truth is, it turns out they knew about the dangers of over-drinking water, as for the next hour, they made disturbing comments about the contestants and their well-being, and even referenced a death of a young man who died due to water intoxication. The man they referenced was Matthew Carrington, a 21-year-old Chico State University student who died drinking too much water in a hazing incident at a fraternity. In this case, Matthew was forced to drink an entire 5-gallon jug of water and then perform multiple calisthenic exercises. The court later revealed that members of the fraternity delayed calling for emergency help for over an hour. This resulted in 4 of the members pleading guilty to involuntary manslaughter. Keep in mind this happened 2 years prior to this contest and was still commonly talked about in the media. It was later revealed that some of the disc jockeys knew about the case and were heard talking about it while on air. But if you thought that was bad, they still made various unsettling comments about the contestants that were clearly suffering at this point, as it's nearly been 2 to 3 hours since the competition started. Again, one of the DJs pointed out that one of the participants started showing signs of distress, and he jokingly yelled out, "We got a guy who's just about to die," in which one of the hosts replied, "Make sure he signs the waiver first."
Is anybody dying in there?
We got a guy that's just about to die.
Oh, good. Make sure you sign that we laugh at that. Yeah. Make sure he signs the release. Get the insurance on that, please.
As time went by, more and more contestants gave in, and eventually Jennifer Strange decided that she could no longer continue on. She managed to finish in second place, and was given a pair of tickets to a Justin Timberlake concert. However, this was probably one of the last things on her mind, as once she called quits out of the competition, she immediately started to have complications regarding stomach and head pain. Even though the contest was technically over, it didn't prevent the host from still making disrespectful comments, as one of the DJs pointed out that Jennifer looked pregnant and stated,
"Oh my gosh, look at her belly! Are you pregnant? Come on over, Jennifer. Are you okay? You want to lay down? What do you?
She can't even walk.
You gonna pass out right now? It's too much water.
My head hurts.
Oh.
They keep telling me that it's the water.
This is what it feels like when you're drowning."
According to witness reports, Jennifer may have drank up to 2 gallons of water in that short time period. After the contest, she called in sick to work and said that she was heading home in terrible pain. She had returned back home and was unfortunately found dead by her own mother a couple hours later after the contest. In Jennifer's autopsy, it was revealed that her cause of death was from hyponatremia. After the news regarding her death was publicly released, KDND fired all 10 associates involved with the show and even cancelled the show entirely. Just a week later, a civil suit was brought up against Entercom, the parent company of the radio station, by Jennifer's family. A lawyer for Strange's family alleged that the station was well aware of the risk, and once these pieces of evidence came forward of all the comments and conversations those part of the station said during the contest, Entercom was then held liable for their actions. In the end, the jury awarded the Strange family with $16.5 million in compensation. On June 10, 2017, the opening episode of the Grand Tour took place. The show consisted of 3 different hosts and presenters. They were Jeremy Clarkson, James May, and the main man for this event, Richard Hammond. The recordings for the show took place in Switzerland, and for the first few days of the shooting, everything was going well until the 5th day. For the show, each presenter would drive a selected vehicle of different supercars. Jeremy Clarkson drove a Lamborghini Aventador S, James May chose an Acura NSX, and Richard Hammond decided to drive the Rimac Concept 1. Throughout each day, numerous test runs were done to show and compare the overall speed and performance of each sports car. For the first 4 runs, everything went smoothly. It was until the 5th run that the unexpected happened. During the last segment, all drivers decided to fully test out their car's max limit, and so a race to see who would complete the course the fastest was on. It should be noted that Richard Hammond was driving the Rimac Concept 1 sports car manufactured in Croatia. It had an acceleration time of 0 to 100 km per hour in 2.5 seconds. Not only that, but it has a top speed of 340 km an hour or 211 miles per hour. Adding on, the specific car is extremely rare, as there are only 8 available models in the entire world currently. With those things mentioned, anyone about to drive the car will feel some nervousness, but in order to up the stakes just a little more, both Jeremy Clarkson and James May wanted to provide some encouragement to Richard to complete the course as quickly as possible. They explained to him beforehand that he had a good chance of breaking the track record of 54 seconds, and that the entirety of Croatia and Eastern Europe would be watching and believing in him to beat the record. Now, of course, Richard Hammond wanted to perform his best, but this sort of pressure would cause almost anyone to feel some sort of anxiousness. At this point, he had already completed 4 different time laps of the hill climb trail course, with each lap being faster than a previous one. So with that in mind, he truly believed it was possible to go even faster, maybe even record-breaking pace, and so he carried on. To get an idea of what the course looked like, here's a visual of it. From the starting point at the bottom of the valley, the 1,758 meter course goes way up to the hills to the finish line that's actually located a few hundred meters from the town of Hamburg. For safety precautions, the position line of the track is positioned in a straight line of road and provides racers a ton of space and time to slow down before completing it. Everything went smoothly for Hammond throughout the entirety of the lap until the ending. Upon completion, it was estimated that he had around 200 meters of safe space to slow down according to those watching. However, their judgments were off. Hammond managed to swerve off around 200 meters off the road after passing the finishing line and crashing nearby the town. After reviewing the surviving footage, it was shown that he was indeed not slowing down and still going at an estimated speed of around 130 kilometers per hour while heading into the climb's first right turn. When he approached the turn, the car began to oversteer to the right as he lifted off the accelerator before applying his brakes. In order to fix his positioning, he attempted to quickly steer to the left, but at this point the car was still traveling at a high speed, and so due to the speed and the car regaining grip, it became uncontrollable, continued steering left, and eventually collided into a barrier and then falling 100 feet off the hill. The car kept rolling after its collision and eventually landed at the bottom after traveling about 500 feet in total. This wasn't the first time Richard Hammond experienced a crash like this, as in September 2006, he was driving a jet-powered car known as the Vampire Dragster while filming for the film series Top Gear. Compared to that crash, Hammond remained conscious during this crash. While inside, he was wearing a helmet, but he had no racing harnesses. It took him some time to get out of the vehicle, however, since he believed that one of his legs were broken. First responders decided to drag him out by his arms, and luckily they managed to get him out in time, since just moments later, the car exploded and bursted into flames and fully melted it. When shortly taken to the nearest hospital, it was identified that he suffered from a fractured knee. Thankfully, this injury was short-lived, and Richard Hammond fully recovered 2 months later in August 2017. After the accident, Richard was interviewed by the Rimac CEO, Mate Rimac, as they discussed the crash. After both rewatched some clips of it, Mate Rimac came to the conclusion that Richard was just driving too quickly, and by the time he realized how fast he was driving, it was already too late to make any proper decisions, which resulted in him running off the track, and his sharp steering could have potentially skewed the car's balance and messed with his vectoring system. While none of the Grand Tour cameras were at the start and finish line, it was confirmed that multiple car cameras like the onboard cameras were capturing footage heading into the crash. It turns out the cameras were destroyed in the incident and in the fire, but footage prior to it were available and shown in the first episode of the Grand Tour series. Adding on, audio from the onboard cameras were spliced into available recordings of the crash in the episode, which proved that some pieces of footage somehow managed to survive. But with this being said, the chances of any of it being publicly resurfaced is low out of respect for Richard Hammond. Mind Men Can is a Sat1 game show that originally aired for 4 seasons from 2010 to 2013. The show revolved around women placing bets that their male partners could complete a difficult physical or mental challenge within a certain time limit. The women are given 100 poker chips each and wager bets on how successful they believe their partner will be in one of the many challenges. What makes these challenges a little bit more difficult is that prior to making the bets, both men are put in a soundproof box, which prevents them from influencing their partner's decision, while they're placing their bets on how well they believe their significant other will perform. The game ends when one of the couples lose all of their chips, and it all comes down to the final game in which whoever wins, they'll receive 50,000 in euros. To keep the show entertaining in some way, some episodes would include celebrities, some unknown challenges, or even have some special episodes for certain events. One of these specials was titled the We Are Pregnant special, and during the episode, 4 different couples had the opportunity to win a prize of 50,000 euros that would definitely help them in their journey of life. Multiple physical and mental rounds had gone by, and by the end of the show, the last 2 contestants were Alexander and Holger. For the last challenge, it was a physical one. It involved them diving 3 times into a submerged glass box, in which in the best of 3, whoever held their breath for the longest won the competition. For the first round, Alexander managed to win, but it was during the second and third one that things quickly became concerning. During the second round, everything was going fine until one of the audience members noticed that Alexander was twitching and pointed it out. So the host brought them both out of the water for safety precautions. While Alexander was still recovering, the host asked him multiple times if he was still able to carry on, in which he explained to him that since he was 1 round away from the prize, he insisted on continuing, and so they did. In the final round, both contestants were visibly struggling, and just 2 minutes in, Holger resurfaced. This meant that Alexander was the winner. However, instead of celebrating with his wife, Alexander was still submerged in a water tank as he lost consciousness and started to drown. Paramedics quickly arrived on scene to get Alexander out of the tank. Thankfully, he was able to cough out the water and remain conscious, which resulted in a quick recovery and being able to celebrate his prize winnings with his wife. After the incident, a spokeswoman for Sat.1 made a statement regarding the show's safety standards. She explained that Alexander had no threat of drowning because of the medical crew's presence, However, this was heavily questioned, as some sources have said that the person who noticed and went to go save Alexander was actually an audience member and not someone part of the medical crew, and it was lucky that they quickly noticed Alexander drowning before anyone else involved in the medical crew. It was even during this point that SAT.1 started to question whether or not any diving or water related challenges should be revoked. However, their final decision was to keep it. Now, regarding the airing of the episode, it ultimately was still safe to be shown to the public since Alexander didn't die. However, out of respect for him and from his request, the incident was completely removed, and despite what many thought, Alexander stated in an interview with SAT.1 that he was happy that the episode was still televised. This image is one of the only few photos from the show before the incident, since the full footage and other screenshots will likely never be publicly released.